Welcome to Beyond the Map, and today we're talking about a series of cases that span different people, different locations, and different years, but they all share one thing in common, a pattern, the same pattern appearing on human skin after some sort of experience that the witness can't fully explain. These aren't scratches or random bruises. They aren't the kind of marks you get from sleeping on your phone or a folded blanket. They raise questions far larger than the marks themselves. So welcome back to Beyond the Map. I'm Buddy Tidwell, and tonight we're stepping into a part of the experiencer phenomenon that few people ever talk about in public, because in this world of high strangeness, physical evidence is rare, but when it does show up, it changes everything. To help us explore this, we've joined by someone on the front lines. John Street is the Assistant State Director of MUFON in Indiana and a veteran field investigator, and he's a member of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team, the people who answer the phones when someone calls and says, something happened to me and I don't know who else to talk to about it. John's worked these cases, he's documented them, and he's seen patterns almost identical to the images that we'll be taking a look at and discussing today. Tonight, we're going to walk through what these markings look like, how common they are, and how MUFON investigates them, and most importantly, what experiencers go through emotionally when their bodies become the evidence. John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. It's nice.
John, I think you've seen a side of the phenomenon that most people never hear about. What originally drew you into the experiencer type investigations and to MUFON? Was there a moment where you realized that this is the work that I'm meant to be doing?
Yeah, after investigating just UFO phenomenon for several years, I realized that MUFON had a team that goes one step beyond and they investigate the people that actually have experiences with aliens. Or that's so they think. And there's so many cases out there that I've heard of, so many cases and so many cases reported that there has to be something going on. They all can't be liars and they all can't be mistaken. Some of them's got, something's got to be going on out there because there's literally hundreds of them reported a year now just in the U.S. alone.
About what year did you start this venture with MUFON, John?
I started MUFON, the field investigator, a little over 5 years ago. And I've been on the ERT, which is Experiencer Resource Team, probably going on 3 years now.
So what are your current responsibilities in the MUFON organization as the assistant director?
Right now, well, I do just a little bit of everything. I usually try to get our meetings together. I manage all the meetings we have in the state and try to get various guests to come and talk at our meetings and send out invitations to the public to try to get the public involved in it. And so we can get, answer questions for the public also. Then also as a field investigator level 3, I do field investigations for the UFO sightings, which being a level 3, I'm certified to investigate anywhere from just a sighting down to cavity mutilations, down to actual landing sites. And as an ERT member, we do strictly deal with the abduction part that people supposed to have contact with aliens.
So just to get a sense of the volume of work that you see in a year, about how many cases or calls do you get and either assign out or take yourself?
In our state alone, Indiana, we average probably, I'm going to say 8 cases a month. We have most of the time we usually have 4 investigators. So I probably do 2 a month myself. Just, that's just the flying saucer part, the so-called flying saucer, the UFO part. And as for ERT, nationwide, I haven't really counted how many we get, but I know just around me in Indiana, Ohio, and Tennessee, I probably get 3 or 4 ERT cases a month. And there are several ERT investigators in the country that handle most of the other states. I think there's 60 ERT members that do actually investigate the ERT part.
So it's easy to do the math. If you get on an average 8 cases a month in a state as populated or as sparsely populated as some parts of Indiana are, it's it's simple math to tell you that there's 100 U.S. cases a month, approximately, at least.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Wide.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes, there is. Because it gets states like California, we're talking, 20 or 30 cases a month, like states like California.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. Do you see that they're elevating, or are they staying about the same, or what could you say over your 5 years of looking at that?
I'd say on the average, the sighting part has stayed probably pretty much on the average. But as for the ERT, the experiencer part of it, to me, since I've been doing it almost 3 years, it's gone up quite a bit. I don't know
So,
what's caused it or what, but it's like, for me, I think it's probably doubled.
so it's either a lot more people are willing to share their experience, or there actually is an increase in experiences
Yeah,
contact.
exactly.
Well, let's try to pull back the curtain a little bit on a MUFON process when you get a phone call. What's that like? Can you kind of walk me through a typical phone call that you might receive?
Well, normally we get emails. We'll get email the whoever reports it to the National MUFON headquarters, which is in Cincinnati, Ohio. They'll give the case to the state where it happened in, which that's for the sighting part of it. Like if we get other sighting and that sighting happened in Indiana, they will assign it to Indiana, and the state director or the chief investigator or myself will give it to a field investigator, one that doesn't currently have a case, or sometimes we'll have one field investigator be doing 2 or 3 cases at a time. That gets really busy. As for the ERT, there's not an investigator in every state for the ERT. So each member of the ERT is given just random cases, and usually by cases, our director gives me the cases that are pretty close to me. In Indiana, Ohio, and Tennessee, I have most of them. And from there, the investigator takes over once he gets the assignment from the chief investigator, state director. And what he'll do, he has a certain amount of time to contact the witness, which depends on the category of the case. There's category 1, category 2, category 3. And category 1 is the one with the least, it's not a whole lot of evidence. And in the vehicle happened like more than a mile away. It'll be a category 1. You have like 72 hours to contact a witness. And category 2 is a little closer. It's a little more, a little more evidence, and that you got 48 hours to contact. And category 3 is the Holy Grail, more or less, where it's the vehicle is more or less within 100 feet of the witness, and then we have 24 hours to contact the witness, which is usually done by email or text at first.
Yeah. As I become more and more familiar with MUFON, it seems like there are a special set of protocols for those of you on the ERT side of things. Can you talk a little bit about how the ERT protects the privacy of the experiencer?
Yeah, the first thing we do when we get an ERT case is we'll go over the case, and then we'll also try to contact the witness, usually by email or text. And we just sent what's called a first response letter, which explains our purpose and what we're doing and what we're contacting, we're contacting them, and the reason we're contacting them because of their report, and just basically go through the steps of what we're trying to do. And usually we'll try to set up a time to have an in-person phone call with that person. So we usually don't call them right off the start. We usually try to get an email or text to set up a good time for them to talk about it, because I don't want to interrupt somebody when they're right in the middle of dinner or in a crowd of people and try to talk to them about something as personal as this. And
Yeah.
once we get get an email back from them or a text request at a time, and we'll set a time and a date, and then we'll have an in-person phone call where we can actually go over things.
I'm sure when you get an ERT case like this and somebody's actually experienced contact of some sort, that there's just a whole range of feelings, or, shock to maybe even embarrassment, who knows? But can you talk about what an experiencer is usually feeling when you have your contact with them?
Most of them are feeling just unsure, that they just want answers. Now, a lot of them have a lot of fear. There are a lot of people that are scared to come out with it because of ridicule. Of course, I'm for one would be afraid to say something like that in the public place because of the ridicule. People think you're crazy or you're making it up, or it's hard to deal with. It's something that personal, that you actually have contact with something that maybe not of this world. A lot of people are apprehensive at first, but once you talk to them and get them going, try to get them going in the right direction, they feel much better even just after a phone call about, having finally told somebody where they've kept it inside so long. Because we might get cases that are several years old before they're even reported.
Yeah, it was the same way in law enforcement. We would have people who would be victims, particularly of like sex crimes, or they've, been violated
Yeah.
in some significant way. It might take years for them to get enough courage, or, built up to actually report that. I would assume this is the same way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the thing about it is, if you wait too long, any evidence that you might have had is gone. It's just you can't find it. You can't get it back once it's gone.
Yeah. That evidence is fragile and perishing every second in most of these cases. And so that sort of brings us to a place to talk about this physical mark case that you had. Could you tell me about that case and how that sort of manifested from the experiencer's point of view?
Well, this was I got the case. I think it was in January of 2024. I received the case, and the field investigator in Ohio had already finished the UFO part, which she really didn't report a UFO, but she had experiences from years earlier of seeing UFOs. But her main concern was waking up one day with a mark on her body. So I received the case and I sent her an email, and she was more than willing to have me call her and talk to her about it, which I did. And we talked probably 25, 30 minutes, and it started off, and she said it started off having dreams, vivid dreams, which she couldn't remember. She knew she had dreams, but she couldn't remember. And then she woke up one morning, took a shower, getting ready for work. Then she had a round circular mark on her shoulder, probably a couple inches diameter. It's like concentric circles with lines going through them, almost perfectly symmetric. And she said it felt raised. It didn't hurt. There wasn't any pain, wasn't any blood, but it felt like it was raised. And that was very concerning for her because she said she got up and she checked the bed, couldn't find anything in the bed lying around that she could have laid on or caused the mark. And she was just dumbfounded. She had no idea how that mark got there.
Was there any memory or reference to any kind of contact in that immediate time frame, or just those previous incidents where she'd seen
Well, she
UFO?
had the previous instance when she was 10 years old, and one she says like 15 years older earlier. And the funny thing about it is she was living in the same area that she grew up in. So she was within a couple miles of the house she grew up in where she saw the UFO when she was 10 years old. But she did say she was watching TV one evening and looked down the hall and glanced down the hall and saw a small, spindly, gray looking being crossing from the kitchen to the living room, crossing the hall. She couldn't see the face. She could just see the side view because it went by so fast. And she said it looked like your typical gray everybody sees, with the long, spindly arms, the big head, and about the size of a child, about 4 foot tall.
And this instance of her seeing the being, was it close in time to the mark manifesting itself?
Oh yeah, it was within a month. I
So,
think it was like 3 weeks.
so kind of close.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If something is visiting her, that they could, possibly visit her again, no problem.
Yeah. The more that I look at these cases, it seems like people who encounter UFOs is not just a one and done, that they're more propensity for them to have a lifetime of incidents or, several incidents over the course of their life.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
So I don't know what that trigger is or how people are targeted for that, what the common thread is, but it does seem that way. Some people go their entire life and never experience anything. And then
Oh
other
yeah. Mm-hmm.
people will, have multiple incidences throughout their life.
Yeah. Well, she did have two other instances within. I believe she got the mark in December. I think it was December of 2024. And I was in contact with her, and like the week I contacted her first, I think I talked to her on January 6th of 2025. And she explained to me like a week earlier, she had those dreams again. She heard robotic voices. She woke up and she heard these voices that are like robotic, and like electronic voices. And she lay down and she had felt like something touched her bed, and something long was inserted both her ears simultaneously. She said it, could have been a long, skinny finger. She didn't know, but something was inserted in her ears. And she woke up the next morning and she had two like burn marks under both her eyes, one under each eye. And she couldn't explain that. And she assumed that something that wherever was stuck in her ears caused them marks. And then 2 weeks after that, she gave me a text and she had another experience. Well, she woke up in the middle of the night and felt like something was pulling her legs apart in the middle of the night. Well, when she got up in the morning, she had bruises on her inner thighs, like something had grabbed her thighs and pulled them apart.
That's really, really disturbing to
Yes,
keep
it is.
having those incidents during the time that you're asleep. But It seems to be a fairly common theme in these cases that people are encountering these beings in the dark of their bedroom at night where they're just lying there and then all of a sudden there's a being there, or all of a sudden something's happening to them that they can't explain and they may not even be fully conscious or awake.
Yeah, it's a very scary feeling knowing you're, in the safety of your own home supposedly, and something like that can get into your house with you not knowing it. That's very scary feeling.
Well, the thing that strikes me is that the vast majority of UFO cases, there's talking about lights in the sky or an object moving, or I got a photograph, and it begins, photograph is sort of the beginning, or a blurry video, and that's physical evidence of a sort. But these cases, that particularly this one you're talking about, this had physical evidence in terms of this mark that you could examine and identify and measure, things like that. I would assume that physical evidence cases are pretty rare.
Oh, very rare. Yes. You get a physical evidence case, something like this, that's like a holy grail. You got to lash onto it and hang with it and do what you can with it. You don't want to let it go.
Yeah. So you actually saw and examined this unusual skin marking that she had,
The only thing I saw was the pictures. I never met her in person, so all the opportunity I got to see the pictures she sent me, which she sent numerous pictures.
and it was on an area of her body between her arm and her breast and the chest
Yeah,
area.
uh-huh. Yeah, right around here in the shoulder, on her right shoulder.
Well, I know you guys at MUFON are really impartial and very professional in your investigations. Are there any immediate steps in your protocol to rule out what we deem as normal causes?
Yeah, we try to think of something. We definitely, like I was reading a case, similar cases where somebody mentioned maybe a hairdryer burn might have caused that. And of course, that was shot down pretty quick. 'Cause, I mean, who's going to burn herself with a hairdryer? It's I don't see why. Because these aren't burn marks. They're more or less just raised marks that are kind of, I would say, maybe a little swollen and not burnt. And a hairdryer would definitely burn your arm, burn the skin.
Well, a month or so ago, I was interviewing Dustin Eskelson, a state director over in Utah, and he had one of these physical mark cases. And that's kind of how I got on this theme of, there might be some commonality in these marks and might be some commonality in the victims or the geolocation. Who knows? How often do you spot these kinds of patterns, whether they're marks or something else that we hadn't discussed? How often do you see them appearing?
Well, certain patterns I haven't. This is the only case I've had with a symmetric pattern, but I have had a few cases in recent months where one woman is getting or waking up with bruises on her body, different places, different times. I mean, she texts me several times a month saying, I've got new bruises. She's been to the doctor. There's nothing wrong, physically wrong with her. And she does not have any clue where these bruises are coming from. And some of them are different shapes of bruises, which you can obviously tell from the pictures. And her husband is a witness. Her husband sees them. He knows about them. And the most recent case I had was a young lady. She had getting burn marks. She had a burn mark on her left thumb, and it was more or less looked like an abrasion, a small circle abrasion, almost like a scoop mark, in which she got on her left thumb, and it started healing up, and then it started scabbing over. And within a week, she had an identical one on her right thumb, an exact same thing. They looked exactly the same. And then she had a few days later, she had a burn on her middle left finger, exact same spot, exact same shape. It's doing the same thing. I actually saw her 2 weeks ago, and the finger was still healing, which I actually got to see in person. She came to a meeting of ours with her husband, and she's really terrified because she's a preschool teacher, and she said she had been going to school with band-aids because she didn't want people see these burns on her hands because she didn't want people to get the wrong ideas.
I hear that term scoop mark quite a bit in these conversations. Can you explain to listeners what a scoop mark is, or how you guys have come to deem it as a scoop mark?
Well, they call it a scoop mark because it looks like somebody took a little baby spoon and takes a piece of your skin out, digs in your skin, and takes a little scoop of skin out, and it leaves a scar, and then indentation in your skin and a scar. And that's how I got the word scoop mark, because it looks like you take a small baby spoon and scooping.
Are these types of scoop injuries, are they pretty common? Are you seeing a lot of that in these experiencer cases?
Now, personally, I haven't seen a whole lot of them, no, but I've heard of I've seen a bunch of them documented that that's one of the most common marks left in the abduction cases is a scoop mark, and that could be on any part of the body, various places, not just one particular place, anytime.
Well, have you had an opportunity to compare notes or to look through the database on these particular cases to see if there were others there with commonality that you're aware of?
Yeah, there was several people with the mark on their shoulder, like she had on her shoulder, but some had them on with the concentric circles and the lines going through them. There were several cases that I looked through over the internet, and they go back to like 2005, the first one I saw. And from 2005 to the case I have, I've seen probably 6 or 7 at least, where the marks are almost exactly the same. And they were all different years, and they happened anywhere from France. There were some reported in Britain and some reported in the U.S. Most were female. There were a couple males that had them. One guy had it on his abdomen, and it seems like most of the women seem to have them on their shoulder or on the top of their breast. That's where it seems to be most of them at.
And these 6 or 7 that you've observed, they shared similar geometry, they looked similar and all that?
So, I mean, they had the 2 concentric circles, and then they also had the lines going through them. The lines might not be exactly the same, going to the same place, or as many lines, or some had more lines. If you just glance at them, you would think they're exact same thing.
I
And
had
they
so
all explained the same thing, that it felt raised. It wasn't a burn. The skin was raised on the outline of those marks.
I'm gonna put up a slide here and share with you as able to obtain that, John.
Okay.
This is, I got, Dustin Eshkelson told me about George Medich, who was instrumental in making the database or designing the database, coming up with the concept, and he said that George Medich was able to search through the database when I believe when Dustin had this case at the top right, the one here with the, you can see it's in black and white, but there's clearly some concentric circles there and some geometry to that mark. And then
Yeah.
he said that Mr. Medich was able to search and find at least 3 other similar cases in your database. And I just wanted to put that up here for you. What goes through your mind when you see this similar symmetry?
Well, that's what really sparked my interest in the case and made it even that more important to find answers, because the actual witness photo there on top, that was hers in black and white. We also have color pictures of that. Then when he sent the similar cases 1 through 3, that's what really blew my mind. I said, "Man, now that is something." I mean, these marks are so similar to different people in different places at different times. I mean, something is going on there. I mean, like some of these cases, like happened in France and Britain, how would anybody know, about these marks where they could try to duplicate them themselves, and why would they? It's senseless. I mean, the case I had, this woman is not looking for fame or anything. She just wants more or less, try to find answers. And it just blew my mind that there are so many of them out there. And I've seen several more besides these 3 cases since I started investigating this case further.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. I was doing some research for the show and going to see if I could share this with you. There was this one website that I came across in France that had just so many numerous examples that it, it'd almost be an injustice not to kind of try to share that. But it is a website in France, and this is current live instance of it. And I've just had Google to translate it into English. But as we scroll through here, we begin to see, some of these marks. Here's one with a kind of looks like a ship's wheel, but a couple
Yeah.
of small circle, larger concentric circle, and then here's one that's more along that classic lines.
Yeah.
And there's another one, at least 2 concentric circles with horizontal, vertical lines. The the number of these things, some of these cases are in 2013, 2015. You can see
Yeah.
here, this one is, maybe partial artifact of what would have been the entire circles there,
Yeah. Hmm.
essentially. And
Yeah. That one looks like a little bit bleeding a little bit also.
Yeah. There are different varying degrees of intensity here. Some of them actually look like blotted on ink marks. Some
Uh-huh.
of them look like burns, and some of them look like scratches that actually, penetrate the skin. But what's remarkable is just the overwhelming number. These things just go on of people who are experiencing this all over the world. It's just an incredible amount of similarity to these marks and,
Yeah.
kind of staggering numbers of people who've actually come forward and reported them. One can only imagine that there's, you know, tons of people who didn't come forward and report
Oh, yeah,
having an
I would
experience
say
like that.
so, definitely, yeah. Yeah, and like I said, when I got her pictures, like I couldn't see them in person, but I actually, did the metadata on her pictures, and the data came back, the date, exact date that she said they happened, so, that's why I believed her pictures were real.
Yeah, that's great that MUFON goes through some of the same investigative protocols that I'm familiar with, like verifying the metadata in a photo for its authenticity.
Yeah, oh, yeah, mhm. Yeah, I mean, it blows my mind there's just so many people at that mark out there,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned, told me the other day, emailed me about Jacques Vallée,
Yeah.
the famous, UFO researcher. He actually, the other day, I found a video about him talking about these marks, and it was really interesting. Yeah, he was talking about the same thing, the theory of a hairdryer, possibly, but he kind of discounted it. And he was very interested because there are so many of them. And a lot of them happened in France, where he's from.
Yeah. When I actually was researching this and heard about Jacques Vallée and the hairdryer theory, it made me go look for my old hairdryer to see if I had one
I
that was similar. And of
haven't used
course,
one in a while.
yeah. Well, today they're different than they would have been in 2013 or 2005 back when this phenomenon started. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't find my old hairdryer, so I don't know. I didn't get to do any comparison. One thing that I think would be really interesting is if MUFON or whoever was the instant investigator in these cases had the opportunity to put scale to these photos, actually put like, a measuring instrument down to
Oh,
see,
yeah.
because some of these, now that I look at them in the context of these online photos, some of them look to be about the size of a quarter or $half, and others are mimicking maybe the size of a baseball or a softball.
Yeah.
They're maybe
Some of
quite
them look
large.
much larger. Yeah. And like I say, talk about a hairdryer. Just I don't think there's that many different sizes of hairdryers out there.
No.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
all basically about the same size.
Yeah. The, the other interesting part would be to see if, and we'll take this on as part of our investigation. We'll consult with medical professionals to see if this matches any known medical, surgical, dermatological instrument, but I'm not aware of anything like that. Of course, I'm not a doctor either, but, did you guys do any looking into the more mundane causes that it could be like that?
Well, the only thing I found that it could, that close to that is the marking they put on the skin for a radiation treatment. I've
Oh, that's
seen
interesting.
they're similar to that, but they're more or less just one circle with a crosshair in the middle to pinpoint radiation therapy.
I assume that's like an ink tone or
Yeah,
some other
yeah,
type of
exactly.
marking. Yeah. Well,
So
it's certainly, an amazing phenomena that's going on with a lot of similarity. So, do you see any emotional patterns in the witnesses or experiencers that you've talked to that have had these kinda either scoop marks or physical marks left? Can only assume it's pretty traumatic.
oh, it is, yeah. The one with the marks on her fingers, this recent case I was doing, she's very fearful because she doesn't know how they happened. Because she went to the doctor and had a culture done, skin culture done, and everything. She thought they were bug bites, and the doctor couldn't find anything. He, did the culture, and there wasn't any type of bacterial or anything in there. It just he couldn't explain it. He had no idea.
Yeah. So, from your own experience, not MUFON's official position, but what do you think these marks are? What do you think they suggest?
That's a good question. I mean, gosh, it could be almost anything. I have thought about how they explain Atlantis, the concentric circles, and the lines being the canals going through the circles to the main part of the city. It could be, resemble something like that. If you're, because if you believe in Atlantis, stuff like that, and if they were an alien civilization or a civilization that and our humans that were well so far advanced they could do, maybe time travel and come back. That's one of one of my thoughts. Is possibility. I mean, I don't have any close. I don't have any kind of proof or anything. It's just one of my ideas. Another idea is just maybe it is just kind of like a target for radiation. Maybe they mark it where they were to mark, pinpoint, a sample they want to take out
Well,
from
I had
inside.
not made correlation to Atlantis. That's a very interesting thought because I am familiar with the size, shape description of Atlantis and the concentric circles, and so that's really interesting.
Yeah, if you've seen pictures of it, it's got the lines, the canals going through it, crossing where the boats come in and out of the water rings outside.
Yeah, our
So,
producer on the show here, Matt, is a big fan of Atlantis theory, so I'll have to get his input on this, see what he thinks. But that's very interesting. On the radiation side of things, have any of these victims that you're aware of experienced or shown any of the signs of radiation poisoning and after effects?
oh, none whatsoever. No, no. Because like I said, a couple of them I know that have went to the doctor and they just couldn't find anything wrong with them, or they weren't sick to their stomach. There wasn't any pain involved or anything. And they just dumbfounded how these things came about. They don't have a clue on what they want answers.
So, if someone were to wake up and see that they had this mark forming on their body, what would be your advice to them, John? What would you say?
I would First thing I would do would get on MUFON.com, their main site, and they have a reported sighting, and they also have an experiencer questionnaire. That's for people who believe they've been abducted or had contact with aliens. And you can fill out the experiencer questionnaire. And as soon as you submit that, it'll go to the headquarters and they will get right on it. And I'd say within a day or two, somebody will be contacting you about your experience.
Is there any
Yeah.
advice of what people shouldn't do? I mean, obviously, we'd want them to photograph and preserve the evidence as freshly as they could in time to when it appeared. But is there anything they shouldn't do?
One thing I wouldn't do, but personally, I would stay off social media first. To me,
That's
that's, I wouldn't be posting that stuff out there to everybody to look at and see and everything. A lot of people want their 3 minutes of fame and post stuff like that on social media, and everything starts getting distorted from then on. You don't know what's real and what's not.
yeah, absolutely.
Once you put something on social media, first thing people are going to start thinking is you're doing this for attention.
Yeah, there'll be a number of trolls and that whole segment out there that will, automatically make value judgments based on
Yeah,
sharing it
yeah.
on social media. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great move is to keep it off of social media if possible.
I mean, there could be a time and a place for that. Sure, when you get some answers and things are getting investigated, yeah, but not not when it first happens. And you got to make sure when it happens, document everything: times, locations, anything strange going on, anything out of the ordinary that's happened when that mark appeared before and after. And of course, pay attention to what could happen in the next couple of days. You never know. You might have a mark somewhere where you can't see it. If you got a significant other, somebody that can look for you, have them look. If one mark appears, there might be another one.
Yeah. Full body inspection wouldn't be a bad idea, would it? Yeah.
That definitely would. Like if you're married, have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband that you're comfortable doing that with, have them. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, the stigma surrounding these types of encounters or sightings, even it seems to be lessening a little with things like the release of the age of disclosure and government officials who are coming forward and talking pretty openly about some of these things. I am sure that there are still a number of people who are afraid to come forward who have experienced significant things. What would your advice be or a message to them if they're afraid to come forward?
Well, if you come to MUFON, we investigate. You completely anonymous. We don't make anything public. Everything is completely private. The only place your name will be is in MUFON's database, which is not made public. The only people available is MUFON field investigators. The only time anything is made public is if you want it made public, because your privacy is the most important thing to us. Anonymity, because a lot of people don't want their name out there associated with this kind of stuff. But don't be afraid, because we're not going to tell anybody. We're not going to post it. We're not going to make money off of it. We're not going to sell it. It's
Well,
your story. It's what's happening to you, and it's private.
I can attest to what you're saying is true because I made effort to try to get some more details prior to us talking about this story. I learned that it was more than just more than just a slogan. That these cases are very private, and MUFON does respect the individual's privacy, which is great. I don't want to I don't want to lump myself as a journalist because I'm certainly not. I'm just presenting
Yeah.
strange stories, but it's my job to kinda dig and to try to find out as much detail as I can about what we're presenting here, but this was kinda tough. I got stopped, pretty quick on that.
Yeah. Now, there's been cases where I've had witnesses, well, experiencers where I'll mention their story that not details, but I'll mention out a strange story, and I've had someone say, "Well, I'd like to do an interview with them and talk to them." I said, "Well, only thing I can do is give that witness your contact information, and if they want to get hold of you from there on, it's up to them. I can't be a go-between guy. Just I can give the witness the information, and whatever they do with it, it's up to them. I leave it in their hands."
Yeah. So, John, could you share with the listeners your biggest takeaway from years of ERT and field investigative work? Are there any takeaways that you would wanna share?
Yeah, I tell you, the feeling that you might have helped somebody, that's my biggest. I love it, because people thank you, and the first time someone has shared their story like that, something so personal and so scary to them, it makes you feel really good knowing that you're listening, you're not judging them, and let them know that you're not going to judge them. That's the main thing, you don't want people thinking that, well, they're going to think I'm crazy. No, we don't think you're crazy. That's part of our job. We're open minded. We listen to everybody and take every story, whatever it is, seriously, because we don't know what you've been through. We don't have a clue. No, that's we just document it and have it on record. What happened to you, and then from there on, we can use your case to compare to other cases and maybe find some similarities. Maybe figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. It kinda hits home. People have asked me over the years, like, "Why did you choose to be a policeman?" I was for maybe a quarter of a century, but I can think back on the victims that I helped in some specific way. Maybe, they weren't all as dramatic as saving somebody's life, but, just giving somebody an outlet, a listening ear sometimes is a really
Oh yeah.
rewarding experience.
Oh, it definitely is. Definitely is.
It seems to me that MUFON started out as sort of a nuts and bolts investigative type agency where there had been craft and there had been sightings and all that. And now MUFON has kind of expanded its mission a little bit into this experiencer resource team. And it is beginning to take in what I would call the other parts of the phenomenon. The nuts and bolts craft is one thing, but the other paranormal implications of this phenomenon are beginning to manifest themselves more and more. It seems like there is a link between some of this, what I would call classic paranormal activity, and what we've always thought of as UFO phenomena. It seems to be like maybe these things are linked a little bit.
Yeah, that I kind of think the same thing myself. I mean, MUFON, they won't investigate paranormal, but some cases it kind of leans towards the paranormal cause of some things, and you've got to take that in consideration because sometimes I do think there's a thin line between paranormal and alien, abductions and stuff like alien visitation. Now, like some of the stories are similar. What happens to paranormal? What happens when aliens visit? Now, it's really hard to determine whether it's something that should be handled by a ghost investigation group or MUFON. But they're so similar. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Somebody's got to look into it and try to figure out the best answer for that. Whatever's happening. So you got to do both of them. Really, you got to have the open mind that it could be paranormal.
Yeah. I think some of these paranormal efforts have been really just efforts to scare us and entertain us a little bit, while some of the other paranormal investigative efforts, one that comes to mind is like Trey Hudson and his Meadow Project. That seems to be legitimate, scientific, rigorous investigation of paranormal activity, but there are others that are not. So, I think I initially have steered away from pursuing any of these paranormal type investigations, sticking more toward the UFO side of things. But I'm beginning to see that maybe that's not the best approach. Maybe that all the evidence should be considered.
Oh yeah, like paranormal and time travel, different dimensions. There's just so much out there of what, it could be the cause of all of it. We just don't know.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, there's a totality of circumstances surrounding this phenomenon where it's past believable. It's beyond a reasonable doubt for me anyway that the phenomena is real. I just I think the questions now are who is it? What's the intent? Where are they coming from? What's the long term ramifications of this exposure? And is there any way we can control this? I'm not sure there is.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any way we can control it. And the biggest question I always get, if there are aliens, do you think they're here to hurt us? I tell people, no, I think they're benevolent. I think they're here to help us. I think, if you think about it, if they were here to hurt us, I truly believe that they would have done it a long time ago. Why are you going to, start a fight with somebody and say, I'm going to wait for you. Here, you got a knife. Go home and get your gun and I'll wait for you. Then I'll start a fight. You don't do that. I mean, you're not going to wait for us to progress so much militarily and stuff like that. Well, we could put up a fight. If you're going to do something like that, you've done it a long time ago.
Yeah. I think that is generally the way that I feel about it as well, is that there is some benevolent intent here, or at least some indifference to, if they're just here observing us as a species, then they're at least indifferent about it. But I think that could change with our advances and, you know, humanity developing nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. And the phenomena seems to be clustered with a great interest around those things. And it's one thing to go to the zoo and observe the tiger when it's on the other side of the glass, but when it starts to encroach out the glass, you feel a little different about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or in this case, it
Definitely.
might be more akin to observing the ants at a picnic. They're all fine to, we don't care about them until they start to get on on our sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, John, I have had a great time with this interview. I would encourage people who have experiences to reach out to their MUFON chapter. I have seen nothing but professionals in my interaction with MUFON. And I would encourage our listeners, if you want to hear more about the future of these types of experiencer investigations, to like and subscribe to join us here on Beyond the Map. We're on YouTube, podcast on Spotify, and everywhere else that podcasts are available. So become a member and like us and join. John, I'd like to ask you to come back and share with us any other thing that you see that's interesting. We'd love to have you back again as a guest.
And I would love to come back. Hopefully, I can just keep finding interesting stuff. Maybe, hopefully, find some answers.
Yeah, I think there's probably an opportunity to have you and Dustin and some of MUFON's top professionals on and have discussions about some of these things. So maybe that opportunity will avail itself as well.
Oh, yeah, it'd be fun. Yeah. Yeah. Dustin's a good guy, very intelligent, and he knows what he's talking about.
Folks, this is John Street, Assistant Director of the MUFON chapter in Indiana. It's been our guest. John, thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much.